Hello, and welcome to Really with Tom and Dave.
Hello.
How are you, Tom?
Oh, I'm just excellent. I'm
You got your
peachy.
souvenir hat again?
I'm fresh as a
I
day. I'm
see.
not taking this thing off.
Yeah, it's a beautiful hat.
I'm
I have
loving the
one
hat.
too.
My son
And it would go
came,
great with my shirt too.
stole my other one right off Luca came and took it right away. So that's
Yeah,
always a good sign if you got a working hat if Luca
yeah.
likes it.
And I'm trying to think. Do we mirror on? We're not mirrored on StreamYard, are we? No, we're not. I'm just checking which hand is which.
Are you
So yeah,
miming?
people
What's
can
happening?
actually read we can actually read things.
Oh yeah, this is
Because
the
that's from Area 50, Area 51 from
yes. Gives all the
we were out
good,
visiting out at the Alien Research Center.
which is kind of a promo for our upcoming George
Which
Knapp series.
are at least three-parter, right? Is it a three? What do you think? It's a three-parter?
Look.
I
There's
think
still
it's
a
three
chance
parts,
to
right?
squeeze a fourth out of this. There's got to be,
Yeah.
but we'll
Or
have
10 if they're all 15 minutes.
Yeah.
We can do tons.
We were there a while, and it was all mega fascinating, and we got up to lots of other hijinks as well. And
Mhm.
my phone is about to explode on us. Isn't that
Yeah,
a fun sound?
yes. Oh, and we also got to see we went out to the Sphere in Las Vegas while we were there.
Which was
Saw
pretty
the
cool.
Aaron Aronofsky's special production for the Sphere.
Yeah,
Is pretty mind-blowing visually.
beautiful. It was,
Yeah, it was really stunning.
beautiful. I mean, I actually thought the sphere outside was a little bigger than it ended up being, and that it was still cool to look at. I have to say, inside was to me the most mind-blowing part for sure. And
Yeah.
for those of you
huge.
who might go to see Darren Aronofsky's movie there, it is don't storm out after 5 minutes because it
Yeah,
gets
I was
better.
writing letters to my lawyer
know.
because you're thinking, wait, this isn't what I was told it was
Yeah,
going to be.
you were yelping
then-
the sphere in your mind.
But then it expands.
Boy, does it. It's really, oh my
Yeah.
God, it's outrageously beautiful.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, this is some cool shit going on. We've got a great guest today, Martin Willis, we're going to get to in just a second, but we have people now. Applause to our listeners. They're moving over to our YouTube channel, but just a reminder, at Really with Tom and Dave, our new exclusive YouTube channel just for those who love Really and Tom and Dave and want to hear all sorts of great stuff. We are still partnered with Stampede Podcast Network, who we love, but our show is moving to at Really with Tom and Dave. So get over there, subscribe, and like.
We'll shut this version. This channel will the Stampede one will no longer be on there.
Yeah,
eventually.
I think we will slowly be sort of moving over there, and I believe that is underway. So get over to at Really with Tom and Dave because we have some outstanding content coming your way, and in just a minute or two, actually, because we got to talk to our we have an expert with us today to unpack this very strange and interesting week we've been having in the UAP world. So our guest today, Martin Willis, the subject of UFOs has somewhat fascinated Martin since his youth, yet he was kind of on the fence about the subject. But he experienced a personal sighting in 2007 in Carmel Valley, California, that solidified for him that unidentifiable flying objects really do exist. And since this time, Martin has paid attention to what others have to say about the phenomenon with some skepticism, yet an open mind. Martin thinks we, including the U.S. government, may never find out exactly what UFOs, UAPs are for real, but it is, in his mind, the most important and exciting puzzle yet to solve. Martin has an interest in astronomy, feels we are not alone, and always maintained a strong scientific fascination of our vast universe. And as a UFO enthusiast, Martin created Podcast UFO in November 2011 and has hosted over 575 show interviews, which is an amazing number. Dave, we have work to do. To match that, Martin was the keynote speaker at the Pine Bush UFO Conference in 2022 and a speaker at the Shag Harbor UFO Expo in 2023, and is a longtime noted professional antique and fine art appraiser and began podcasting on antiques, auctions, and art in 2009. And we're thrilled to have him here with us today. Where is Martin? There he is.
There we are. Martin.
There he is.
How
Great
are
to
you?
see you, sir.
How are you?
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Nice to get a chance to talk to you.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. It was so lovely to have you on my show, even though it wasn't me hosting, but that was very nice,
I know, yeah,
Dave.
Dean Alioto
Yeah, that's right.
was sitting in for you then, but I think we talk was I on Alejandro's once?
We could have,
I 'cause I
possibly.
can't
Yeah,
remember because I know because I was gonna say, like, when I f about, I'm trying to think how long ago, when I sort of got, catapulted into this sort of seriously, into the issue of UFOs and or UAP was after watching, some of, James Fox's movies.
yes.
And then after that, I wanted to seek out sort of rational, level-headed, non-histrionic, people talking about UFOs online, and I think the first, 3 podcasts I came across were yours and Alejandro Rojas's, Open Minds,
Yeah, yeah,
and Ryan Sprague's, Somewhere in the Skies. So
right.
those were my first entry podcasts into the UFO world. So
Wow.
thank you.
And a
Wow, my
great
pleasure.
starting point for anyone listening
Yes.
to this very day. And your interviews are great, and I agree the approach and um, the tone of it is I think just welcoming to the public at large who may or may not be curious. You know, they don't want to necessarily think everything has to be real. You know, but they
Yeah.
just want to get a sense of what is happening. And it was a kind of interesting week for UAP news. But before we get to that, I'm very curious because I don't know this story. What happened to you in 2007 to kind of turn you into a believer?
Well, first of all, prior to that, I had a little bit of interest, just like a decade or so earlier, only because I had an insurance broker at my house, and he said to me, I was getting life insurance at the time, and he,
That's the only reason to have an insurance broker in your house,
that's
really.
right, yeah.
It's
But for
Yeah.
some reason,
Otherwise, there's a problem.
he said, yeah, he said casually, he said, yeah, I was in Vietnam. And I said, oh, boy, that must have been something. He said, well, I had an unusual job. And I said, well, what was that? And he said, I was part of a secret part of the Air Force to investigate UFOs. And a lot of things were happening during napalming and things like that. And I said, what, really? And then he
Wow.
said, yes. And they're very interested in our nukes too, and all this. And I lost track of that guy. Can't find him. I've tried to find him, and I know his name, but I can't. I tried insurance. I tried other insurance
wow.
brokers, and nobody
That's
knows.
it.
Can I
Anyway,
say that that may be a
abducted.
bigger mystery
Yeah, yeah.
than the UAP because
He was.
insurance brokers, they never disappear.
I know.
They
How
don't
is
That's
go
that
right.
away.
That's
possible?
right. Well, I didn't
You
die, so
you can
Did you
try
leave
to
a
avo
message you were
you can
interested in
try to get
car
rid of
and
them.
yeah,
yeah.
auto and that's wow. Okay, so that's
But
an
here's
interesting.
the key thing of that night. He was just getting ready to leave. We were talking about other things, and on the way out the door, I said, "Hey, by the way, what does the government think that these things? What do they want?" And he just looked at me and he said, "We're a petri dish." That's what he said to me. So
Mhm.
I never forgot that. So I had that in the back of my mind. But in 2007, I was doing appraisals, which I do in that area. As I did Merv Griffin, and he was right there and stuff like that. So um, I was in a hot tub. I was not drinking. People always ask me if I was drinking.
Mm.
And it's not a spectacular sighting. I mean, mine's kind of bland compared to the most of the ones that I hear. But anyway, something caught my eye, and I looked up, and it was a perfectly shaped disc going right over my head. It was dusk, about 8 or something, and the thing that freaked me out, and I had never heard before, never heard anyone say anything before, was it was dead silent, and like this thing's moving, and there's no noise, and it's not really high up, so I wouldn't hear a noise if it was making one, and had a blue glow around it, and then it just stopped, and then it just stayed there, and then it just went on an angle toward Monterey. I was in Carmel Valley, and it headed toward Monterey. So I jumped out of the hot tub. I was staying at a guest house at a neighbor's ranch they had there. Ran in the guest house. There was a phone on the wall. I called 911. I apologize. It's not an emergency, but has anyone else seen this thing flying over toward Monterey? And there's a Navy, I forget, school or something there, something like that in Monterey.
Right.
But anyway, she was really sarcastic with me. Hold on, you're saying this is a flying saucer, huh? I mean, really sarcastic. So I waited for 20 minutes, didn't hear anything from her. I finally hung up. I went to work the following Monday, and I worked at a big auction house out there, and I was mentoring someone in like silver and stuff like that, and I said, I got to tell you what happened this weekend. And I said, and I told her the story, and they said, please don't tell anyone. She said, no, I won't. And then like 15 minutes later, someone goes, ooh, aliens, huh? So I felt embarrassed, and I kind of tucked it away. And that was 2007. And it wasn't until 2011 that I decided to really dig into it. So that's kind of how that all happened.
How long did
Mhm.
the actual sighting last in your mind, do you think?
I'm going to say it was probably only 15 or 20 seconds.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It wasn't
But
very long.
enough to see it sort of stop, hover,
Yeah.
head in another direction. What and was it, what color was the you said there was a blue glow around it.
Like
What
a
was
blue
the
glow around it. And I had thought I was the only one that ever talked about that, but I've heard about, I don't know, 2 or 3 other people since then have
Mhm.
mentioned that also.
and like a silvery disc, or
Yeah, it
was
was
it
sort of silvery blue glow. It's kind of like a cool color blue. And yeah, it just like a fuzziness about it. Yeah, it was odd.
and was it
Mhm.
and how high up
I
would you
don't
say it
know,
was?
I mean, it's impossible to really tell for sure, but I felt like it might have been like less than 1,000 feet, but I really don't know. You know,
Right. So hard to gauge the size of it.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But anyway,
Um
I just right then and there it was like, and I got to tell you, if I had a camera on me right then, I wouldn't have taken a picture because I didn't want to stop watching it. It was so mesmerizing, and it wasn't registering in my head what it was at first. It was like,
Mhm.
what, like it was hard to understand. Now, I've seen a couple of things, and my camera's ready, but it's always, everything I've seen is explainable. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
well, Dave had a similar experience in terms of like not going for the phone, not go when you saw your
Yeah.
thing.
And weirder, the fact I was with Jeremy Corbell when we had a sighting,
Oh yes,
and Jeremy
I heard about that.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and Jeremy didn't take a picture. In fact, the only thing he said for the entire, experience was he said, "I'm not even gonna take a picture," which is weird, uh,
yeah,
on 2 levels. One, that because I know Jeremy had trains to get ready to take those
yeah,
pictures,
yeah.
and it's also the longest I've ever seen Jeremy go without talking. Uh, so it was
Now
several
we know what
minutes
it takes.
of
Yeah.
of quiet.
I met him a few times. I think I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was quite remarkable in that. Now, the only other another little detail, that you jumped out of the hot tub. Were you naked, Martin?
This
Um,
particular case, I was not,
oh,
and
okay.
I'm
So I
not
just want
afraid to admit that. I mean,
all right.
I had a house in Maine. A hot air balloon landed right in my backyard, and I had to get out naked. I mean, what else could I do? So I had
Yeah.
no towel
Well,
nearby, and like, hello, please don't look. Yeah,
He was at a
yeah.
guest's house, Dave. So
Oh, well, I
not
know,
everybody just throws their clothes off when they go to a guest house. That's just your
no?
behavior.
yeah.
It's just
Oh,
how you function.
I
But
assume that's
I was afraid
appropriate.
of getting probed, so I had a really good bathing suit on.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
good.
Yeah, you got to
Well,
get
they were yeah,
some
well,
mesh.
I just wanna make sure we're creating a proper word picture, especially for the listeners, the
yes,
ones
that's
who aren't
true.
watching
Yeah,
the video.
yeah.
You can
Um,
describe it.
but
This is
that
what it
yes,
might be
but
like.
that's a pretty pretentious, like, what you said it was about 30 seconds for
Yeah, I can't remember really. I mean, it's
yeah.
kind of blurry now to think about how much time. It might have been a little longer because I watched as long as I could see it go.
Yeah, because well, I'd say even like, the sighting that Jeremy and I had was a few minutes, but it's amazing, how much those few minutes or even a few seconds can sort of change the course of your life.
Oh yeah, I mean, it totally did. I mean,
Yeah.
things have worked out fantastically since that happened. I mean, I would have never been looking into this topic, and I've met so many amazing people and the love of my life all through this topic.
Amazing.
By that one being in the hot tub just for the few minutes I was in there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I would say even from like our small sampling of conversations at this point, it's almost hard to keep up with the revelations, the sense of expansion and the rapid expansion of like the people out there and the interesting work that they're doing. What I can't imagine what it's like after what is it,
75,
575? Wow.
Yeah.
579 actually, to be
Yeah.
more accurate. Yes. And
And
go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, and I mean, so your sighting was 2007. You started your podcast in 2011.
Yeah.
Like, did you dive into researching and becoming more knowledgeable, like, right after the experience, and then
No,
just
as a matter of fact, I
no?
put it away. I
Yeah.
completely tucked it away. And do you know Ed Krasnick,
I
a
know that, yes,
comedian?
the comedian.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
I've known Ed for
yeah,
decades.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I was talking to him about it, and Paul Gilmartin. Um, I don't know, you know Paul Gilmartin? Yeah.
Yeah, I know the name. Why do I know
Dinner and
that
a
name?
Movie, he did that
Oh,
for years.
yes,
Yeah, yeah.
yes,
He's a
yes.
comedian.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
I know them
and
both.
yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I was connected to those guys, and I was talking to him about it, and it just I don't know something kind of I was talking to him on his he did some type of show. I was recorded with him, and he said there's a lot of interest in that, and that kind of got me like, hey, I'm doing this podcast on antiques. It's all well and good, and it's fun and it's interesting, but UFO sure would be much more interesting. And so that's when I started to really dig in. So I really didn't start digging in. Like I say, I put it away for 3.5 years, and somewhere in 2011, I said, I'm going to start looking into this. And what fascinated me, and I'm sure you both can relate to this, is that you know you might be expecting to see tinfoil hatters, but you find so many highly intelligent people that are just it's not what I expected. I didn't
Mhm.
expect it. And
Well, as I already said, that was kind of one of the significances what made you and Alejandro and, Ryan, like, to me, significant was that it was, a show I could listen to and not get irritated and not get alienated by the tone of the shows, that it was serious people with intelligence, discussing the topic seriously, and people who all demanded that their credulity be earned, by
mhm,
Mhm.
by evidence.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
You
I
know,
think that's what drew me. I kind of like you was, always interested, but there's a huge difference between kind of being a little interested and then diving in the way we're all diving in, and certainly the way you have. And yet it was Dave. We had been friends for years, and his interest then kind of drew me closer because I respected him. I, knew he had a rational mind. I didn't think this was, and I was surprised. I was like, wow, really? Like you've kind
this is
of
all
gone
very
in.
nice to hear, by the way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I won't ever compliment you again, and that's respect. But since Martin's here, no,
oh,
but
he
I was
said
just
he said he was surprised you had a rational mind.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
what I heard.
yeah,
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 yeah.
that's
Most
kind of
people
what I
are.
meant.
yeah,
No, but I that I think it takes something like that. I think it takes people sort of just personally putting their credibility out there, and
hmm,
also in a kind of wider forum, being like, these, if you're not asking questions at this point, the way the future is rushing at us, then you're just sort of in denial. And I think what we're trying to do is kind of say, like, it's okay, like the water's warm. It's, just join in. There's important questions being asked, and there's important revelations happening on a almost weekly basis now, or at least further confirmations of things going on. And I think the broader public is interested, is ready. And then I think, like you said, or one of the things I've noticed is that everybody has a connection to this somehow, like a story or
right,
something that they've either tucked away,
yeah,
or like you, were you initially ridiculed by it, and like, okay, or like, well, obviously not. And I
yeah,
find that there's just this groundswell of experience that I just find fascinating. And when you just sort of probe a little bit, even a person who's like, no, nothing's ever happened. Oh, wait a minute, actually, and then you're like, well, wait, and then some story pops out. You're like, that's a significant thing. So I've found that fascinating. Now, I don't know about you. When you started doing this, did you have any sleepless nights? Did the material get a little intense for you?
not really. No, no. I mean,
I'm the
I was
wuss.
really
I'm
on
the wuss of the bunch.
I was really on the fence about the abduction part of this thing, and
Right.
whether that was really happening. And then, but I've seen some things that are pretty darn convincing, so I have to be open minded to it. I mean, I think what made me a little apprehensive about that to begin with is it seemed like there were so many people saying they were being abducted, and like maybe this is something else. And I talked to someone in Sweden, and I said, "What's it?" And he's like the top dog over there, Klaus Swan, when it comes to UFOs. He's on TV all the time. He's like Stanton Friedman of Sweden, and he said, "I've only heard of one abduction case." So it's really different. And why would it be in the different countries? I don't know. And then people say, well, Eisenhower made a deal back in 61, or whatever it is. So I don't know about any of
Yeah.
that. But
Yeah,
anyway,
no,
it
I
was
don't know.
that. I guess here's the thing. You asked about sleepless nights. So, and I've said this before in my show, if that what these people are claiming is happening to them, I would be curled up in a ball in a corner somewhere. I wouldn't be able to function. And I just had a guest last week, Matthew Roberts. He was in the Encounters in the first series,
Yeah,
and
I saw that. It's a good. It's yeah.
naval
It's
intelligence and all that. And basically, he's had he had kind of what's called the hitchhiker effect. From the gimbal UFO in 2015. Kind of, he feels like it's when he looked into it deeply. And I've heard other people say this. I've heard longtime researchers say this. Don't look too hard; it'll start looking back at you.
Yeah, yeah, that seems to be, yeah, people that once you engage with the topic,
Yeah, a
weird
little
things can
deeply.
start happening.
Yeah.
Have you found that in your life that as
No,
you've gone through?
no.
No?
I had a very weird experience prior to that, but with a poltergeist, I guess you'd call it that.
Mm,
But I that was prior to that. And some people that I've talked to said, well, that's related, and I don't know how it could possibly be related. And I don't get the whole consciousness thing and all that, how people
yeah.
manifest, and I'm not really sure about all that stuff. But it's just another puzzle.
Yeah, I also don't think you need to be in for a penny, in for a pound with all of it. I do think everybody kind of has their line that either, it's taking them a minute to get there, because it is the case that, because I inherently resist conspiracy, because it's just, I feel like personally, I think the government is fairly disorganized. I suppose there's a level of, something really small, really compressed, and really insulated that could endure as a sort of legacy program type thing. So I leave my mind open to that, but generally I'm not. I'm averse to sort of conspiracy theories. So it takes me a minute with some of this stuff. However, even if you're trying to keep as sober a mind as possible, you know the aperture continues to open with the weirdness, and you sort of, some people like, okay, I'm getting off at this stop. Like, I'm getting off at this floor, I'm getting off at the chemical gateway floor, like whatever it is. It's kind of, I think you find your level of tolerance. I think it's just important for people to be open-minded about what's happening, because there's just, I mean, for example, I don't know, did you watch this James Lacatski interview by chance on
No, but I know about it. I read about it, and yeah, that's really fascinating. If the but the puzzling part is, he says he had permission to say that. Now you probably want to go in a nutshell for the person that's not familiar with what you're talking about, but he claims that there was a non-human craft that the government has, and they had access to the inside of it. There was no power source that they could see, no fuel, no anything like that. And I personally think that perhaps her propulsion has nothing to do with what we could even imagine. Maybe that thing could still move around without any, type of propulsion that we can figure out. And I mean, it's such a mystery, and I really think we know such a tiny, tiny little bit
so
of
little. And I
it.
want to go
Mhm.
even a little further back too, and ask you and Dave, like, who is James Lacatski, and why should we care what he has to say about any of this?
Hmm. Well, I know that he. Now, I may be confusing him. Did he have anything to do with Bigelow at one time?
Yes. Yeah, I
Yes,
think so.
Yeah.
he was the guy, that Harry Reid went to, or might even be the other way around. He may have gone to Harry Reid, but he started, OSAP,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
he put out the bid that Bigelow won,
which is
and
this
he
big program, right? In
yes,
2000 something or other, 3 or 4,
yes,
that it kind of also encompassed Skinwalker, right?
Right.
advanced
Yeah.
aerospace systems and
Weapons, some
weapons
vague kind of, didn't have UAP in it or UFO in it.
and puppies,
Puppies.
I think, and puppies. Yeah.
But it covered a lot of ground, I guess. And was he a physicist, Dave? Do you know?
Yeah, I think
Yes.
yes, I think he's a physicist,
Yep.
right? Is that right, Martin?
Yes. I believe he is. We should probably. I should probably look it up, but I do believe he is a physicist.
Yeah, and
And
I think
he,
Dr. James. He's a
yeah, Dr.
PhD in
James
something.
Lacatski.
Yeah.
Yeah, and but also a longtime intelligence officer.
Right. Yeah.
So, which explains his incredible caginess when he was on Weaponized.
And
Um,
I wonder if he is perhaps there was you mentioned Alejandro Rojas earlier, and right when David Grush came out, a little while after that, Alejandro and I were having a talk on the phone, and he said, "I think that Grush has been told by all these guys, like the Bigelow bunch and Skinwalker bunch, meaning Lacatski, and maybe that is one of the people that told him about the crafts. I would assume that was possible."
mhm.
he seems to present, and it seems like he gets backed up as just one of the legitimate keeper of secrets. He really he wrote Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, which is a crazy read,
Yeah.
that George
Mhm.
Knapp and Colm. Here
Yeah.
I go,
Yeah,
Dave, with his last name,
Keller.
Kelleher.
Kelleher,
Yeah, I feel like Steve
Colin
Martin doing
Kelleher.
Kelleher. There's a lot in there for me.
It's a very normal Irish name. Yeah.
Well, and I'm Irish, or at least Welsh, which is
Hmm.
close, but I find their language difficult. But
Hmm.
the he the interview is, because I sort of heard snippets and was trying to figure out what was going, like it. The interview starts kind of fascinating. Like, it seems like there's a lot of, he does extremely in a disciplined fashion, talks about this interior, like, yes, what's in the book is kind of precisely what he's willing to say, that he was inside a craft, he saw a craft, they didn't see anything. He talks a lot, and I was like, wow, this interview is better than I thought it is. It's like 10 minutes in, like, we're talking, this seems to confirm this, blah blah, and then it becomes this sort of hair pulling, excruciating exercise where he is can't answer this, won't answer this, like swerves and pivots all around.
Yeah, people don't want to hear that. Every time I interview someone and they kind of say, "Well, I really can't," like Lou Elizondo or someone like that. Well, I can't really go into that type of detail. Oh, it really burnt. People get really, you get a lot of
Yeah,
comments about that. A lot of,
and it's I think it's sometimes I think it's there like people say I just they get mad and I think they get so mad that they stop paying attention to the fact that like Lou Elizondo and I found like James Lacatski too. They say a lot with where they stop talking.
Yeah,
yeah.
Like
Oh,
they
yeah.
indicate that they indicate they sort of get the momentum. If you let yourself intellectually let the momentum carry you through the end of the sentence,
Yeah. Yeah.
you can figure out what they're trying to lead you towards.
Hmm.
But I think people just get very don't take the time to do that or take the time to listen well. I think in a lot of cases.
it was clear in this interview that Jeremy and George were very frustrated, and I assume they had thought they were going to get more than they did, because it almost felt like they were missing the forest for the trees. Like, but wait a minute, like he is. It's not like he's saying that he's an expert on farming and he found some object that he went into that seemed
Yeah.
to resemble a UAP. This is someone that has been studying UAP for the government for 30 whatever some odd years, and he's confirming the ship, and then also talking about all kinds of other shit that he's like perfectly willing to say, like, absolutely they're hurting people, absolutely they're just, absolutely, like, look at Brazil, absolutely stuff happened in Brazil. He was like, look at South America now, which I assume he was referring to the
The
Peruvian
Peruvian
situation,
village.
which
Yeah.
Dave and I were making fun of a couple weeks ago. There were jetpack miners flying around, and now, it sounds like he's saying that people are still being, now they don't, now in
Terrorized.
that,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
But
he was
think
likening
about the
it to the
jetpacks. So I mean that's a crazy thing in itself because they're $250,000
yeah,
to $400,000 a piece, You know,
Yeah, that's the it's not and they
I'm
don't
saving
and
up.
they
I'm saving
and
up
they
my
only
money.
and they only fly for about 15
yeah,
minutes.
yeah. I mean, the
Whereas,
jetpack thing was just as bizarre as the rest of it.
yeah, because a helicopter or even a drone, is much more
Yeah,
useful in if you wanna explore, through the jungles
yeah,
Not as
than,
fun. It's not
than
as much fun,
jetpacks.
Dave.
Yeah,
that's
and
right.
jetpacks, they're also really loud.
Very loud.
Um,
Unless they've
and,
changed something. Yeah, they're very noisy.
yeah,
Yeah.
really loud, inefficient, short flights, like,
8
I think
minutes
50.
at the
Yeah,
most.
yeah,
Yeah,
tops, yeah.
yeah,
So it's kind of a stupid, way for a criminal organization
yeah,
to to do their research.
right.
Yeah, it's just goes to show that in this conversation there was from someone who is one of the arguably top dogs of someone who might be able to say this is what we've been studying. He definitely inferred that stuff continued to be researched past OSAP. He continued to suggest that it was being studied before OSAP. He continued to he was making a lot of sort of broad statements of that he didn't say that they were a direct threat because he said it's hard to define a threat, right? Like if capability and intent. Yeah, so they didn't. He claimed they knew a lot about their capability, but they didn't know anything about their intent. They did say that proximity, if you're near one, get the hell away because it does. There's huge amounts of
It's a threat
evidence.
to your health.
Yeah, huge amounts of evidence that it will hurt you. An orb will hurt you just by being close to you. That people are, um, there was a lot of stuff in that interview, and
Well, yeah, and he definitely said that people are mistaken if they think all of the phenomena is benign,
Right. Yeah.
And I guess you cited the Colores, which is an instant I'm not familiar with, but I've heard a few people bring it up recently.
Now, which one
Uh,
is that? I know there was the one
that's
in
the
Brazil where
Brazilian.
that guy was, yeah, he ended up dying, I believe, or something. There were
Yeah, they
burns
guess
and
there were
things like
people
that.
were being burned
Yeah,
and somebody did die, and
yeah,
yeah. So you're saying, yeah, they have killed people,
yeah,
but
it's
yeah.
but they
It's
crazy.
don't know.
awful hard to know whatever these things are, in what way they think. I mean, I say this on my show sometimes, like we always project ourselves onto the thinking of these things. And, there's absolutely no way to tell what a being from somewhere else is going to be thinking, whether they'll even care about life or death or care about anything, or emotional, or their curiosities may be totally different if they even have them, all that stuff. Who
Yeah.
knows? We always
you
try
have
to figure it
such
out.
you have such a cross section of experience now with all of your conversations that you've had. What do you think? What's your theory? What do you think it is?
Um, I think it's, I kind of side with, and I'm not saying I'm researched
No one's
quarter
holding you down.
nearly
Yeah,
as
no.
much as Jacques Vallée, but I think it's a combination. I think there's a combination of things. I don't think it's any one thing in particular, but I mean, I am totally open minded to the the possibilities. I feel kind of evenly, but mostly extraterrestrial would seems to answer a little bit more in my mind. But I also think that there could be interdimensional, there could be, time travel is not, maybe not as much, but it's still a possibility. So I think it could be, not just one thing. And I just think that we know so little, and we may never, I like the term is like, if we found out what they were, we still may not know what they are.
Hmm.
I mean, like,
Mhm.
it's maybe beyond our comprehension. So I don't.
Yeah.
I think it is very possible, and I've had a couple of astronomers on, and I had Seth Shostak from SETI on, and we kind of debated the topic a bit, and I said
Mhm.
to him, we know the physics that we have now because we don't know how they get here. We don't know. He said it would be impossible. And so I go, how can you say that it would be impossible? You know, you, so I don't know what to think about it.
Yeah. Yep, that's that weird thing where people go, in the science community, it's it's impossible, so it can't be happening, as opposed to going, well, something seems to be happening that should be impossible. Maybe we should try to figure out how it's happening, as opposed to just not looking at it all because it can't be happening, which seems to be the take of most of mainstream science community, is to not look at it because we already know it can't happen. Instead of being curious as to, well, something that can't happen is happening. So
Yes.
how is that going? How is that
Yeah, you got
continuing
to
to go on?
reverse engineer it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned that you didn't think the government or we would know what exactly this was. You had a pretty close-up view of this recent, arguably biggest, disclosure moment in the history of the world, which was David Grush. Am I correct that you were there
Yeah.
that day?
Yeah, I got to meet him also. And yeah, that
Tell us
was,
what was that like?
yeah, it's funny. It's like, I have a friend, Chris Leto, who's an F-16, retired pilot in Portugal. And
I love his
yeah,
stuff.
it's great.
Yeah.
I woke up one morning and I saw him writing somewhere, maybe on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, something like, well, I'm going to go to the DC hearing. I said, geez, I'm down in South Carolina. If he's going to the DC hearing, guess what? I'm going. So booked a flight and went up there, and I'm friends with Randall Nickerson, the Ariel Phenomenon movie. And so he and I were in touch, and he started sending me pictures of the building, the Rayburn building, where they were going to hold it. And he says, God, there's only 30 seats here. And it's like 30 seats. So I go, okay, what time are you getting there? He says, I'm not leaving. He slept. He didn't sleep. He sat there overnight and waited overnight. So I said, look, if people start showing up, I don't care what time it is, call me. And so I think it was about 5 a.m. he called. And so my producer and I went over there. We got in line, and we were number 13 in line. Very interesting
Nice.
people, fun people to talk to. It was a blast. And then Tim Burchett comes right out and starts talking to us all. And I got him on, I interviewed him. And so that was a lot of fun. And then the doors open, and other people were actually waiting at the Rayburn building. We were across the street because we knew it opened earlier and went through a tunnel to get there. So we got in, really lucky that we knew all this stuff. So we got in, and then all these people started, weaseling in line in front of us. And I'm thinking, oh God, 30 seats, and then we see, George and Jeremy walk right by, and they're coming in at 9 o'clock, and sure enough, they get in the front row. And so, but I was the second to last. Chris was the last person, and I was the second to last person in the door. And the only way we got in is because I ratted on the people that cut in front of us, so we
As well you should have.
5:40 a.m. That's the way I got in, and it was absolutely surreal to be there. It was like a real highlight. I loved it, and I thought they asked some excellent questions. There was a couple of things that I go, oh God, but for the most part, I thought there was some really good questions, and I thought everyone had great answers. And it just seems to me like it would have made more of an impression. But I'll tell you, there was over 1,000 people trying to get those 30 seats. And I walked down, because I had someone save my place in line, and just walked down and started talking to all these people. A lot of people recognized me from my show, which was kind of fun. So, but that was interesting. All these people trying to get in, and the people there at that building said, "We've never seen anything like this ever for any."
Congressional hearings don't usually get that kind of packed crowds.
Yeah, and why they put it in I think it was by design. They put it in the little, no seating type of thing.
Yeah.
Right.
But it was fascinating to be right there, and I filmed the whole thing. I got it all on my. I was told you can't even take a picture, and then when I got in there, I talked to the guy at the door, and he said, "No, do whatever you want, just don't interrupt anyone. So if you look at a lot of the news pictures of the whole thing, you'll see my phone up in the air on a stick. I filmed the whole thing. So, but it was great. It was really great. Great experience.
You're right. It was an impressive lineup of bipartisan unity, which is probably even rarer than the testimony you were hearing. Was the fact that everybody was there, not throwing grenades at each other, to kind of rally around this topic.
No one was making cheap political points.
No, right? It was. What was Grush like?
Oh, he's. I only met him for a second, but I mean, he's very gracious, very, very nice. And I, I mean, a lot of people, will say to me, well, he's full of crap and all this stuff, but he's not gonna risk everything, go under oath, and BS. I mean, I I
Yeah.
I totally
He's
get it.
already
And
well, he's already sacrificed his career,
yeah,
and he's potentially sacrificing his liberty if anything
yeah,
he is saying is untrue,
right.
it can be proven to be untrue,
Yeah.
to Congress, then he's risking, and if he says something, if he goes beyond what the Dopser allows, in public, he's also risking his freedom
Oh
there.
yeah. Yeah. And
So
then
he's making
now they're saying they can't put him in a skiff because he doesn't hold a classification anymore, and all that stuff. That's kind of ridiculous, the whole thing. But
yeah,
Although
the
I
people who took away his classification, yeah, the people who took away his, clearances
yeah,
am I
and
wrong
who
though?
could give it back. Yeah.
Didn't they say this week that they are getting in a skiff with him?
I heard that from
they
Burchett,
did at the
yeah.
hearing. And then afterwards, I guess it all fell apart from what I
But I think
understand.
I saw,
Subsequently, I think this week though, I think there is some. I think one of
I
the
s I
Luna
think
is that
I heard Tim Burchett talking about it on News Nation,
I
saying
think
that
they
they were
might get in.
sometime before
Oh, that would be
Christmas, he
They
great.
said.
might,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. I think they might get, which was one of the kind of things made me go like, okay, well, it's like this sort of grab bag this week of like, what is the glass half full or half empty? Because on the one hand, you have this AARO report comes out, which is a great big bag of nothing.
Yeah.
Um,
Let's talk about
and
that because I haven't read it. You guys can talk about it.
yeah, I know the snippets of, I know a great deal of the content was and I don't know, Martin, you feel free to like
Yeah.
correct me. I mean,
Well,
they said there was no evidence that anyone had ever been harmed by a UFO, which is just like banana cakes. What are they talking
Yeah.
about?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, clearly not true.
Well, I think it's all window dressing, just like you mentioned Project Blue Book years ago, did a very similar thing. And I just, it's really kind of ridiculous because I, I, I don't have evidence, but I know in my heart that Kirkpatrick knows a lot more that's classified, and just this is what we get fed. Basically the public gets fed this, just like back in 1969, the Congdon report and all that. Just kind of make it nothing, kind of calm people down, make make uh, a transparency look that's not real. I mean, this it's not. That's what I'm thinking. And I think it's kind of BS. Basically, they talk about things that um, I think the more data they get, they believe that almost all of them will be resolved. We don't care about the ones that are going to be resolved, right? We want
Which
to
they
know about
keep
the ones that can't be resolved. And there's
But
Yeah.
they
so many
can't stop
fantastic
saying that.
ones. Yeah,
Yeah, they
They
throw up
can't stop saying that
yeah,
they
they
will
throw up
be
all the
all resolved.
cases.
yeah,
Yeah, they throw up all the cases that should never be discussed in the first place because they're clearly not UFOs. They're clearly not UAP.
yeah,
Right.
And everyone knows they're not
yeah,
UAP, and no one's pretending that they are UAP, but they say this isn't UAP and this isn't
yeah,
UAP, so you can ignore these things over here.
yeah.
Because
And
let's
they
just
ran
assume
that
that
film, like, I don't know, remember, I don't know, several months ago when that they had that other hearing. They kept running this stupid film of a balloon over and over again, trying to get, oh, stop right there, oh yeah, it's a Mylar balloon. We don't need to know any of that stuff. I mean, that's just wasting time
no.
for one thing.
Yeah, well, I think it's like it's things in Hynek's book, The UFO Experience. Even way back then, his complaint to the Condor Commission study was he said that 90% of the stuff that was being addressed in the study should have been excluded from the study.
Hmm.
He said you should exclude balloons. You should exclude
Yeah,
weather phenomena. You should exclude any of these things that you know what they are should be excluded from the study. The only things that should be in the study are the things you can't explain.
right,
And
exactly. Yeah,
so it's the exact same situation again.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Speaking of balloons, I just happened to be right underneath the balloon in Myrtle Beach when it was shot. Got out of
Oh,
my
really?
car. I was with the real estate agent, and And he said, well, there's a Chinese balloon up there. And I looked up and I said, yeah, it looks just like it. Now, I was on a cruise, so I didn't know it. I knew it was in the Midwest. I didn't know it had floated anywhere.
All the way
So,
across the country.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I get out and I said, yeah, that looks just like it. He goes, no, it isn't. And just then the fighter jet comes and kapop. I caught it all on
Wow.
film. I caught it right on, took all the pictures as it was happening. It was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
there's a
the
little
only
synchronicity.
I know, that's amazing. That's got to be a sign of something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then we never saw anything of the other 3 or 4
No.
things they shot down that week.
Yeah. There's that kind of went away fast, didn't it? You know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and it does seem odd that they would that it's impossible to find something that you've shot down.
Couldn't find
And,
it.
yeah.
Couldn't find any of it. That Canadian wilderness, Dave. It's
Ah.
really it's just impossible to get through those trees.
if they can
Yeah.
find someone that falls out of a boat and go through all the currents and algorithms and stuff like that and find them floating with a life jacket, 150 miles away, they can figure out how to find an object they shoot down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
these jets just apparently have no cameras, no means of seeing where their
No
shit
drones even?
lands.
No.
No,
And a lot
nothing.
of times, one of the things that fighter pilots love to do is when they shoot something, they love to then just take out a nice book and read it for a while.
They don't look. Don't
They
look.
don't they don't want to watch it hit the ground. They just, well, you know what?
Right.
Time for me to catch up on my
Autopilot.
Faulkner.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
They
put it on
they don't look.
autopilot and let it land on the
Mhm.
carrier. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was saying, I think I said this when we were talking to Jeremy or something, but it's like there was at the exact week or 2 around those shoot downs, they had released jet wing footage in beautiful fucking 4K HD, gorgeous, of when I think it was either Russian jet had buzzed one of our jets
yes. Yeah.
somewhere in
Yeah.
Ukraine,
Yeah.
and they
Invented gas
and they had
petrol
this just
on it. Yeah.
like gorgeous, ready for prime time footage that they if they want to show you,
Yeah.
we now know they have ultra beautiful, multi-dimensional cameras, but they just can't seem to get it together to show you
Yeah.
what other very harmless other things they shot down that they don't
Yeah.
want to tell you about.
Yeah, and it's also when they know that something is simply a Chinese bit of technology, a spy balloon. They're quite open about it. They'll do tons
Yeah.
of press conferences, and there'll
Yeah,
be lots
that's
of
not
video
classified,
and,
right?
And but
Yeah.
you know,
Well, that
but
there's
when,
got to be really good footage of the Tic Tac out there that we'll never
yeah,
see. I mean,
yeah,
we see the Fleur video, and they did take other video of it, but we'll never see that. And that's what gets me. They have this. He talks. Kirkpatrick talks about getting better data. I know they have this, so they have this available, unless it's somehow compartmentalized, so they can't get access to it somehow. And that's usually when it goes into private hands somehow. But I don't know
which
what happened.
the insufficient data, and then story, case closed, because that's basically, they'll say case closed once they have that.
Yeah.
It is again another absolute replica of Blue Book again, because
Yeah.
that's what Hynek kept complaining was they would there'd be a sighting, and that the military would say insufficient data, and that would be the end of the story. Unidentified due to insufficient data, and then they would just stop investigating, and he would keep arguing, well, isn't that the reason we should go get more data?
Yeah.
And they would keep saying no.
Yeah.
So
Or is it data in America? I keep forgetting.
you say data.
Data,
We were
isn't
all
it
making
data?
fun of you in the private chat that Dave was
I
saying
know, yeah.
data. No,
Sorry, I'm still an immigrant.
yeah.
It's true.
Look, just don't
Maybe.
start speaking French in this podcast,
Yeah.
pal.
Hey.
We so am I correct to say that the Blue Book playbook still works in 2023, some billion years after the first Project Blue Book? I say I think it works. People just go like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
See, what happens is, when you have people, and there's a lot of new, I mean, you guys are doing this show right at a great time, because, of everything that's happening. And that wasn't always the case. But you have new people coming into this constantly because they see it on the news or whatever. And sometimes I make the mistake of not explaining a case or something, forgetting that there's new people looking at it. But all they have to do is is go in and take a look at something. Oh yeah, well it's nothing. So okay, and they give up pretty quickly.
Yeah. Well, and that the
I
same
think
thing.
that's
Yeah,
precisely why AARO exists. Go ahead, Dave.
Arrow. Yeah, well, I'm saying Arrow and the NASA report. The fact that the first statement out of their mouths is always no credible evidence of an extraterrestrial source,
Yeah,
um, which it's like most people that are serious about the subject will say, "Yeah, we know that. We don't. Yeah, we keep saying we don't know what these
yeah,
are."
yeah.
Um, but what they don't say is, "Do you have any credible evidence for a terrestrial source?"
Mm.
And the answer to that question is also no.
Yes, right.
I mean, we've excluded every terrestrial explanation
Yeah.
for that 5% that is anomalous.
Hmm.
Which is the only 5% we should be talking about.
Right. And,
Um,
I just take my sighting, which was so simple. I mean, all these people I've talked to over the years, I've heard such incredible things. But you take that just alone, and the first thing I thought of is how could this possibly be from here? It can't be from here. We
yeah,
don't, I mean, how could it, even after all this time, I still think that back in 2007, they didn't have like a black project that could do whatever the thing was doing. And why would it? Why would they have it out in, right over Carmel Valley and all that? I don't know.
yeah,
There's a lot of people that argue that some of these big triangles that are around are ours, and that they fly them in the public because they want people to think they're UFOs, but they're really, secret programs that we have and all that. I hear all these things all the time. So,
yeah.
so,
Which
and where the heck would they house them? These things that are 4 miles wide.
yes, yes, and
It's so
and
practical to make a 4-mile wide
Yeah,
plane these days. I
yeah.
mean, there's
yeah,
so much use for it in the battlefield and the giant,
You just land on
yeah,
the battlefield. Yeah,
just
yeah,
unflyable,
snuff it out.
just monstrosity. I guess to justify some defense dollars. But I think
yeah,
my theory is that there is this slow disclosure happening, and I think by virtue
Hmm.
of the fact that podcasts like yours exist, Martin, and that yes, there's new people jumping in, there is clearly an interest. And I think Arrow is this effort to just give the mainstream media something to like report, like it really wants to cut off a lot of this information at the past, right? Like David Grush went in and just dumped the entire like toy basket on the table,
Yeah,
and it seems like there's just all this now kind of flurry of reaction to the whistleblowers, and Arrow is this benign, boring, no information. Kirkpatrick seems to hate his job. He looks like the saddest man on earth.
yeah,
He just seems annoyed with his assignment, eager to hand it off to somebody. And so that's like where CNN can go, like, oh, we talked to the people. We're trying to take it seriously. And in the
yeah,
meantime, you've got Grush and you've got people like, Dr. Lacatski, even with all of his sort of cloak and dagger stuff, uh, spilling out incredible information. And the fact that Arrow is acting like they're just studying this little thing and we can't find anything. And so, meanwhile, what's so fucking obvious is the government. Why, if there was nothing to see, if this is just balloons, why have we been studying for 50 years? Like,
yeah,
why would the government
hmm
be spending all this money if it seems like, it's such a parallel universe, and
yeah,
yet people have just enough lack of attention span to, I think to your point, Martin, like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
I'm going to look in. Oh, yeah, no, okay, guess
Well,
and they just go right back out.
yeah,
and that everyone, and even you read the comments on any Twitter thread about UFOs, and there's always those people going, "It's a drone, it's a
yeah,
drone,"
yeah, yeah,
and it's like, as you said, the drones haven't been around that long,
yeah.
and like, and Lou Elizondo's 5 observables are basically outlined in the Twining memo from what year was that? Back in the 50s
The Twining,
or
I think,
40?
was 47.
Yeah,
I may have that mixed up, but that's what comes to mind. But for
that
Twining, but I may have that wrong.
what
I
year?
always
Yeah, what
remember
year was that?
dates.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I can't remember, right, but that's the one where he came out and said these are not illusory
yeah,
or fictitious.
that's
These
right.
are real objects, and
Yep.
but then in the rest of that memo, he describes instantaneous acceleration.
Yeah, yeah, that's
He
right.
basically describes all of the observables that Lou Elizondo described.
Right, right. I was just seeing if I could find that. Um, if it's all right with you, I'd like to talk to you about a really interesting guest I had.
Yeah, of
Yes,
course.
Yeah,
absolutely.
because it kind of fits
Yeah.
into everything we're talking about here. So, years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, I was contacted by one of my listeners. He said, "Hey, I know this guy that was in the military, and he came upon a crashed UFO and in Peru." So I said, back in 1997. So I said, "Oh, well, interesting." He says he says he won't talk about it. He only talked about it once, one time only. And so I started looking into him, and so Leslie Kane and I know this sounds bizarre, all these different people I'm going to say, Stephen Greer, Dr. Greer, and Leslie Kane, and Bud Hopkins, and all, and James Fox was involved, and they flew him up along with other people to over to New York City, and they interviewed him. So you see this interview back in 2001, and it's absolutely fascinating. The guy's name is John Wigand. So I was introduced to him, and I have a place in South Carolina. So my girlfriend and I drove up to him in North Carolina where he lives, and we sat and we talked to him. And
Is he American or is he
yes,
Peruvian
no,
or?
he's American. He was in the Marines in
Oh,
1996.
okay.
Yeah.
Marines. Like, okay.
So uh, he he was horrified by the whole situation, but it's such an amazing encounter. And I have to tell you, of all the people that I've interviewed on this show of all these years, I interviewed him face to face. I believe this guy 100%, and I
Hmm.
feel as though I have a pretty good barometer for people, and I'm always searching out fakes and things in the art world and things like that. I'm always like investigating. So I just feel the body language, everything about him was just right on. I talked to James Fox, and he said of all the people he's ever interviewed, he believes this guy 110%. So anyway, so I was the second person to interview him. And what happened during the interview is I was expecting he and I would have 2 or 3 hour conversations, and I expected he would just blurt it all out. It was like pulling teeth. He was so traumatized by the situation. Basically, what happened is he's in he was in this Project Laser Strike, and it was basically a drug stopping. There was a bunch of different countries got together trying to stop drug trafficking, and so that was all through radar. And they thought they had a crashed friendly, because something they said there was a crash and it's out here and these coordinates and head out there. So he went out with a platoon and three Humvees.
On foot.
No, three Humvees. They traveled about
Okay.
3 hours, and then they walked about. As they're walking, they see this thing and they get closer to it. He's on point. He's in the front, and with two other people, and he walks up to it, and it's this egg-shaped craft stuck into a wall like a cliff, and there's like fluid running out of it, and the whole craft is changing colors, and the fluid's changing colors. So he climbs up. The two sergeants that were with him stay down, and he climbs up, and he gets up there, and there's a hand hanging out of the thing, and all of a sudden he starts feeling like there's beings inside, and they're dying. And so he had this was really a traumatic situation for him, and because he didn't know what he was looking at, he didn't even think alien at first. He didn't know what it was. And
Right.
he got some of the fluid on him and lost all his hair where it got on him, and his fatigues got all rotted and everything where it touched and everything. So he's told to get down, and all of a sudden these guys in black camo show up, and they were American or sounding American, and they had weapons, and they shackled him up, and it said, "You are not supposed to be here. What the f you're doing here?" and all that, and they take him away, and then he gets shipped back over, to the States, and he had such a horrible. He ended up getting a less than honorable discharge, and they set him up with all these different things, and because he wanted to talk about it, and so he's only talked about it twice, and it was like the biggest nightmare in his life, and to me that was, I mean, 30,000 people watched the video. Um, and then I don't know how many thousands, listen to the audio, but it's just like, it just should get out there. I mean, this guy is
What is his
Mhm.
last name?
Wygant, Weygandt, John Wygant.
Gandt.
Yep. Anyway, that was, out of all the, people often ask me, what was kind of the most incredible interview? That was that one. That was the
Yeah.
most incredible interview because I believe the guy sitting face to
Mhm.
face with him, and I could see the turmoil that the thing
Yeah.
causes him today. He still has nightmares about it. The
Does he
1990s.
still have health effects?
He does. Yep. And I asked him that because, of course, people always want to know that, and he said he didn't want to talk about it, but he'll talk to me. He'll talk to me about it, but
Yeah.
I haven't talked to him basically since
And this was 93, you said?
97.
97.
Has he had any follow-on phenomena
Nope, I did ask him that.
from
Yeah,
that?
I did
Yeah.
ask him that. Yeah, but he did have, there was someone outside his door, and the guy got arrested. He had a gun in his car. They don't know what that was about. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
anyway, he'll never talk about it again. He says he'll never
Really?
talk about it again.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's because he's scared because he's scared of ramifications of talking about something that clearly
Yeah.
he got in big, deep shit for just having experienced, or because it's just so traumatic to
So I
talk
said
about.
to him in the beginning, he says, hey, there's the whistleblower thing, the government. He goes, I do not trust the government. I'm not going to the government. And then I had these journalists contact me saying, hey, we heard you're interviewing him. We'd like to do a story. And so I told him that. And he said, no, I'm not talking to any journalists. They just twist your words. I'm not going to talk to anyone. So I got it for the
Yeah.
interview, and I don't think he's gonna talk again. But it's an
Yeah.
incredible
That's
situation.
I'm gonna
yeah.
look that interview
And
up, and
yeah, I'm going to see that too. I've heard. I think I've heard people talking about this story. Now that you mentioned the craft in the side of the cliff,
Yeah,
that rang a bell.
yeah, it
But
was
yeah,
like
I
wedged
haven't
in.
seen the video.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and if it's a
there was
retrieval, if this thing's wedged in, how could they possibly retrieve something like that? I mean, in the
Yeah.
middle of the jungle. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's crazy.
I just it suggests so much, like this ability, these camo black paratroopers who suddenly know this thing is there, and
And they're there
it
right
does.
away.
Yeah.
And that happened. There was another guy that talked recently, another Marine that had talked about a similar situation where the guys in black camo showed up too and threatened him. And that was
Yeah.
somewhere in South America.
Well, that's the thing. Well, the government might not be good at keeping secrets, which is probably a big reason why DoD doesn't want Congress to know anything.
Mm.
But military are pretty good at it because they, unlike Congress, they will threaten to kill people.
Yeah. Oh, he was threatened. They said they were going to push him right out of the helicopter. Yeah.
Yeah.
If he ever talked about it,
Which,
or if he thought about talking about it, he's just going to go out right out the door.
yeah, Congress, the worst you get is we'll subpoena you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know,
Right. Yeah.
which would
and
scare
then we
some
won't,
people.
and then we won't enforce it. Yeah.
Exactly.
There's a couple. We had a friend of mine named Jean Anzulis, who was had an abduction experience, and I had known her for many years, and her interview is, well, her initial story to me was one that kind of was sort of my moment. I didn't see something; it was more her story because it was somebody that I just trusted implicitly, and had this. You just have your gut tells you something like this, that there's no basis for deception here. There's simply no, and yes, some people are crazy for no reason, crazy is crazy. And yet this story stayed with me for years and years and years. And I when we started doing this, I reached out again, and it'd been a while. We had been in touch a little bit, but I had reached out again just to be like, is that still, like, your story has stayed with me forever. Has it stayed with you forever? And she came on, and it's, I think, a very, very compelling, if you're kind of on the fence about abduction, it is a very fascinating, and she, is a good, is a very good storyteller in the sense of the way she conveys it. But there was also the way you described it, was the Travis Walton story of the loggers and the 70s, and that whole story. And Payne Lindsay, the podcaster, has a High Strange podcast, and he has a really good interview with Travis, and the story of that is very similar. It reminds me of, like, just in some cases with Travis, his voice, he's got that gravelly, kind of southern, whatever, it's a Southwest kind of, but it is so convincing and so beyond our scope to get the story in our heads. Like, everything in our brains wants to reject this story.
Yeah.
And, you're talking about an egg trapped in a mountain, spilling colorful fluid, hands hanging out. And yet, when you hear Travis's story, if you hear Gene's story, these these things happen to these people. They are absolutely convinced it happened to them, which
Yeah.
suggests something happened. And it's just what
Yeah.
is so fascinating about this, because so much of it is first person experience that you're going by this better than anyone, and I think we only have our own senses to trust or to believe someone, but when you know.
Yeah. Now I've sat and with Travis and talked to him off air, just like in a restaurant and stuff like that. And, I never get any feelings of, deception of any of his story. It's really quite an incredible thing. And I remember the first time I had him on my show, I said, so you were away for like 4 days. Where did you go to the bathroom? I mean, you think of things like
Mhm.
that. I asked him stuff like that, and he doesn't remember. But I mean,
Yeah.
that whole situation is just
Yeah.
crazy.
Because he thought he had been gone a few hours, I think,
Yeah. Like a matter of
right,
fact, when he got
when his
into the
brother came to
car,
pick him up,
he got into the car with his brother.
or
They
yeah,
told him
or
to feel his,
brother-in-law, I guess.
yeah, to feel his
Mhm.
face, and he had the growth, and he said, "How did that happen?" He didn't. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Well, I've been late the last few days, I've actually been going back over some of David Jacobs' stuff.
yeah,
Yeah, and David Jacobs, he was a research partner with Bud
yeah,
Hopkins on, abductions, and he wrote a book. I remember getting the book back in the late '90s, The Threat, and his newer book is it called They Walk Among Us,
yeah. When
or
yeah, he talks about people getting apartments and all
yeah,
this stuff. Yeah,
the
yeah,
yeah,
that's right.
hybrid
Aliens are getting
aliens
apartments?
Yeah,
living, yeah, they
yeah,
have getting apartments and
Explain the LA
interacting.
housing crisis for sure.
Yeah, and I guess in the threat you're talking about, they would interact with abductees and visit them and learn how to behave as humans from
yeah.
abductees, and of course the tons of sexual uh stories of sexual
I hope
interactions
so.
between
Yeah,
hybrids and
yeah,
humans. um and then he also in the new book he talks about something called hybrids, and I forget what the distinction is between hybrids and hybrids.
hmm.
um, but what's your take on Jacobs? Because I'm really hoping that he's nuts. I really wanted, because it's
Yeah,
terrifying. His that
well,
this change is coming, and that
yeah,
there is an army of hybrids, hybrids, and abductees who are in the control of aliens
yeah. I don't know what
that
to
are,
make. I've met him
yeah,
and hung out with him before, and nice guy, very, very intelligent. There's no
yeah.
question
He
about
seems
that.
very rational.
Seems
Yeah,
very rational, although those
It
claims
seems.
they're pretty far out there, and I don't know what to make of them. I've heard. I mean, during an interview one time, I thought, wow, this is really stretching it. But I mean, I don't know. I can't say for sure that he's crazy. Even though you want him to be, but I don't know.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I've never met him. I was
yeah.
wondering if you had interviewed him.
Yeah, a few times,
Yeah,
and I do believe that he's not doing any more interviews at this point. That's what I heard. He's
yeah,
retired basically.
yeah.
So
Well, that's one of the, I mean, from doing
Well,
this,
he's preparing for the change.
I guess
right.
so. He's
Hope he knows
That's
what to do. Yeah,
or the
Yeah,
hybrids have smuggled him into someplace. It is disconcerting, the level of very intelligent, scientifically minded, degrees, and then some of the stuff that comes that comes at you. You are kind of, I mean, even our conversation with was it Mike Masters last week?
Oh, I love Mike.
Uh,
Mike
mhm.
and I.
oh,
Yeah, Mike's an
so
awesome guy.
interesting,
Did he get
so
really?
great.
Did he get naughty on your show? Yeah,
Did he get naughty?
yeah,
It's
I mean,
hard
I don't know. Our standards are
hard to
pretty, I
tell.
mean,
Yeah,
low or high. It's sort of, it's tough to know what our range is.
okay,
We're
yeah.
pretty,
We were pretty blue most of the time. We're cleaning it
yeah,
up for
we kind of
you,
scrape the
Mark, because
bottom of
you're
the barrel
good.
ourselves,
Good.
you're a
Uh,
gentleman. So we've been trying to keep it
Yeah,
nice.
I've been cursing at a much
he's
less of a
oh,
high clip.
Mike is so funny though. What a funny guy he
Yeah,
is. Yeah,
I know. I want to read a novel. I guess. Right.
The newest
That
book.
is.
Yeah, we were. Dave and I were all proud of ourselves. We'd read like all this entire library. He's like, but you got to read the new one. We're like, oh God,
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
after,
Yeah.
but we'll have him on again. But yeah, his time, I was one of the people who was like, time travelers, like really, I gotta put this in my head too now. Like,
Yeah.
it's not enough that we're just debating ET or interdimension. I gotta worry about me from the future coming to, probe people or whatever. And he makes it really. I was reading that book. I'm like, God damn. Well,
Yeah.
he's thought about it a lot more than I have,
Yeah.
and he, to me, was doing a pretty good case of squashing the ET theory.
Yeah. Well, I said to him,
And it,
"Oh, go. I'm sorry. Go ahead."
no, go
Yeah.
ahead.
No, I said last time I talked to him, uh, the one thing about us turning into grays in the future, if it is us, this civilization, I said, you look at like Hollywood, you know, you look okay. Look at a 400-year-old painting. People were not the best looking, and we kind of evolved. Going, there's the urge to go for pretty and better looking and better looking. So these grays are they're pretty ugly. And he says, have you ever been to Walmart? Those people like sex. That was his answer to that. I was, so he said, so
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. It's basically what he said. But it was just
Yeah,
a
that's
Well,
character.
true.
that's well,
Yeah.
Everybody's
well,
still
that's
having sex at some point in the future, and we'll evolve to.
well, although that's the premise of Idiocracy is that it's the elites, the intellectual and the elites that are having fewer and fewer children in the world,
Mm,
and so we're kind of handing over humanity to the people who are still willing to reproduce.
yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
Yeah.
it's an arguable benefit one way or another. There's some annoying elites too. Um, but I think it is incredible the level of thinking that's gone into a lot of this stuff, and it does, a lot of it has to be considered, and I don't know about from hybrids to hybrids. Once the doors open, it
yeah.
it
Well,
it just keeps wanting to open.
I
to me,
don't,
there was
if you ask me right now, my opinion, if I think there's
We're asking.
hybrids, I don't think there's hybrids among us. I really don't. I think that's a bunch of BS myself. Now, maybe there's a possibility that there's hybrids somewhere out there, because enough people will say, they think they've had their eggs, removed or whatever, through these things. Possibly, and that could be for reasons of who knows what. Um, why that would be happening in a situation. But for them to be walking among us, I don't think this isn't the best place to be. I don't think. I don't know.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's weird. It
Dave
also
could
the
Dave could be a hybrid, is what I'm
yeah. Why
thinking.
that'd be nice to find out.
It would
But
explain a lot.
yeah, the but there's what was I going to say? Something before that.
Sorry, I threw you.
um, that yeah, the notion. I know. Oh, I know what I was going. I was just going to say that I know none of the people who claim to be hybrids are very compelling. You
Exactly.
know,
Now listen.
You
because
got to
none of
keep it.
I,
they don't have any information or any.
right.
They
They don't
don't
have
seem
any
to have,
pictures.
and they don't seem to have. They don't seem particularly intelligent. Um, like
eh,
not that they're stupid, but they don't seem above average even.
well, let me tell you something. I
Um,
went to a conference in Phoenix, the International UFO Congress, and they had
mhm.
this woman up there that was introducing all these hybrids to all of us. And then they were saying, yeah, and they had a crayon drawing picture. This is me and when my alien world, and like this is how I look, and it was like what, and you know what? They got a
Yeah,
standing ovation. All these
Mm.
people were like loving it, and I'm thinking,
yeah,
oh my god, it's just so far out there. I don't know,
yeah. That's a credulousness that I can't embrace.
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
So,
and
what's the greater danger to disclosure and really getting to the bottom of this? Is it the carnival circus atmosphere on the believer side, or is it the Arrow Kirkpatrick benign blue book stuff on the other side? I myself don't know, because there's so many cross currents of media and ways people jump onto this thing, and like you, Martin, I've been to the Pasadena UFO conference or whatever festival, whatever you want to call it, where it's like there's a real
Yeah, Alien
there's
Con, I think you went
yeah,
to.
there's people who are saying really interesting, compelling stuff, and hugely credentialed and credible people with also a crazy town, with
Yeah.
like on sort of the other panels. It's a tough one. Like, how do you excavate the real from all of this? And is that, I think that's just as hard to contend with in some ways.
Or if it was real, would anyone believe it? That's the other tough part of it. But Lou Elizondo recently tweeted, or do you call it X'd now? What do you
Yeah, I guess we have to call it
X'd?
Xed, which
You don't
it's
have to
not.
do
It's
Yeah,
kind
anything.
of
I
a
it
mean,
took a long
silly
time to
thing.
get used to
I'm
saying.
kind of pissed
It
off
took
about
so
that
long to
whole
get used
thing.
to saying
Yeah,
tweet. Tweet sounded stupid when we started
yeah,
it.
yeah. All
But
right. So he
yeah,
X'd that there's going to be in early 2024, early to mid 2024, a lot is going to be revealed. And as you know, I
mhm.
keep my word. And so, basically, that was pretty interesting, a pretty interesting
Yeah,
X tweet. So, but I mean, I don't know how people, I will tell you this. I don't think that we have to worry about people going nuts and, religion collapsing and all this stuff. I don't think there's any of that. When I was at the DC hearing, it was pretty awesome. I'm looking in the audience and everyone's starting to leave. And I had just met David Grush, and they're looking, there's a priest, and he's just standing there, smiling and very, and say, I go, any chance I can interview you? And he said, sure. And then he says, just no, I'm not speaking for the church. And so he basically said that, God will love anyone. It doesn't matter, and I was shocked that he has a fascination with this whole thing. And he believes that it's really true
yeah,
that they really are visiting us and life is out there. And,
yeah.
he just did that little disclaimer of saying, I'm not representing the church. But other than that, it was
Although the
fascinating.
church did do an encyclical a few years back
Right. Yeah.
where they basically said that the Catholic faith embraces the
Yeah.
notion of alien
Yeah.
life, and that
He talked about
it's
that.
just
Yeah.
yeah, it's an expansion of the congregation.
yeah, potentially a lot more followers.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's you never
Money,
know.
money.
Now
Yeah. Uh,
now
yeah. But also they have some great astronomers. They have some
yes.
great
Yeah.
observatories. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
true.
Well, they were right there. They could steal it up right from Galileo right at the start.
Hmm.
And they got him out of the way, so they had no
That's right.
competition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're very
Um,
good with ontological shock. The Catholic
yeah.
Church, they handle it well.
Mm.
Well, they believe in pan-dimensional beings called angels and demons.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um,
But anyway, I don't
but there's
think, as
also
far as disclosure and all that, I don't think if it does come, I don't know how it's going to, and I don't know who's going to believe it. And, I think if our government starts talking about it, I don't know if they're going to be believed, because no one believes them half the time, and rightly so. And so I think, if we had this mass sighting that was just
Right.
undeniable, like, the 50-mile UFO hanging out over a city for a day or something, and little orbs coming down and visiting people and stuff like that. Maybe, but I don't.
yeah,
Yeah, maybe you're
I
right.
mean, we
That
have,
might last a
yeah,
weekend of news.
yeah,
Yeah.
but we have
'cause
all this AI stuff. Who's going to believe it? This AI, the
yeah.
deep fakes and whatever
Only
they
the
can
only
do.
the people that are there and physically see
Yeah,
it
you have to touch it.
themselves.
Yeah.
And even then people say, "Oh, it's a holographic projection." And even though you can try to explain to people, those don't exist. They just don't,
Yeah.
Yeah.
there's no such thing as a hologram projector. It'd be great, but film industry would love it.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah.
but there was also gonna go back to where we started was talking about Lacatski, because he did drop a bombshell that kind of no one seems to be taking notice of, and that was like he and Kelleher started talking about the real Men in Black
Hmm.
in the interview, and then Jeremy kind of tried to pin him down. What do you mean the real Men in Black? Who are the real Men in Black? And Kelleher finally goes, are they human? Are they not human? and Kelleher said they are part of the phenomenon.
Hmm.
And he said, "Well, so they're not human?" He goes, "They are part of the phenomenon."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically,
Well,
Kelleher and Lacatski were saying, coming out and saying that the real Men in Black are non-human,
They
and
were,
that's kind of a remarkable
well,
thing to
yeah.
you
say.
hear about it so often. You hear about these people showing up and how they know and all that stuff. It really, really makes you wonder. And all the different
Yeah,
stories. I mean, I had a woman tell me that these people showed up in an old car, just like you would, and they came out and they were wearing black, black suits and all that stuff, just like they talk
yeah,
about, and I don't know, I mean,
and they seem to keep showing up faster than
yeah, yeah.
any other branch of government
Well,
or police can get there.
Lacatski went even a little weirder because there was something in the book, and I ordered it. And I know George was talking about it last week. He was saying that they have to study the cultural something about the cultural phenomenon of this, of the power of these craft. That it's not, there's the physical aspect, there's the psychic aspect of these craft and their impact, there's the sort of health, but then there's sort of the cultural, not confusion,
Presentation.
inversion, cultural. But what Lacatski was suggesting was that the Men in Black were both alien and also uh, having that their purpose was to actually draw attention to themselves. That it was such a
In the
strange,
phenomena, yeah.
yeah, that he was trying that as he was asking all of these very sort of teasing, he was clearly sort of
Yeah,
enjoying the game, which I found ultimately to be a little like tiresome. Like, okay, you want to keep the security status, but it's like, is it a game? Are we just playing a game here? Like that,
Hmm.
because he was seemed to enjoying the fact that, oh, I can't talk about that, and
yeah.
finding it hilarious.
But he but he
Um,
said he said, "Are they there to suppress it?" Like, he said, what's the effect
yeah, uh,
of their presence?" And he says, "Is it to shut people up, or is it to make people more convinced it's real?"
yeah,
Hmm.
that was kind of what my
Yeah.
takeaway was, that it was that they didn't think it was necessarily human. They thought that there was sort of human fake versions of Men in Black, and then he also suggested that the
Yeah.
actual phenomenon was the phenomenon, which then you're like, okay, I don't yeah, talk
Yeah.
about intent. I don't know what the hell's going on at that point. Like,
Yeah.
but
It's
Yeah.
bizarre
he
stuff.
So,
seems to
yeah,
be in
so
a position to know.
so the non-humans are using reverse psychology to get people to be convinced that what they saw was alien.
I doesn't make sense to
Yeah.
me, but it's,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
seem to think
Yeah.
there's some research there to back that up.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
so many
Yeah, I
questions,
would
so
say
many
out of
interesting questions.
all the people that I've interviewed over the years, and it's a lot more than the 579 shows I've had, because a lot of times I'll have two people on, so or more.
Mhm.
Um, but I would say that I've heard the stories of Men in Black directly from people probably 3 or 4 times in that whole time, which is
Yeah.
still, I mean, really weird. Still really weird, even though it's that few, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, and do black fatigues count? I
Yeah, I
mean,
was going to ask.
black camo, does that count as Men in Black?
No, I
Yeah.
don't know what that is. For some reason, Jonathan Wygant thought they had something to do with the Department of Energy.
Hmm.
Yeah.
DOE.
Well, I guess
So
that seems to be where a lot of the, a lot of the secrets have been stored, I guess,
really,
because
wow,
it's FOIA exempt.
wow.
Oh,
So
is it?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, there's the atomic energy, exemption for the Department of Energy, uh, so their classification system is, exempt from FOIA requests.
ah,
So
It wouldn't be hard to imagine that the Department of Energy had sensors that were going to be picking up things in our atmosphere that have a signature that is unique to that department, or would require the attention of that department, or have some kind of, maybe that could be, you know why it seemed to be a lot of sensor talk in this Lacatski interview. Um, he also, what was the other thing I was going to say? Um, yeah, it's worth a listen. He a lot of Skinwalker. Like he really thinks that the paranormal was necessary to investigate at Skinwalker Ranch. There was far more that occurred there that's ever been reported, that there was both physical, photographic proof that no one's ever seen. But he really, because I guess in the original OSAP report, and I hate all these acronyms, but that they got really beat up for including these paranormal stories about hitchhikers and about seeing this and feelings and, and yet he was like, there is absolutely no way to study this phenomenon and separate it from the
because
paranormal.
it's ubiquitous. Yeah. It's like the paranormal events seem to go hand in glove with the nuts and bolts sightings of craft.
Right.
Even going back to, oh my God, now I'm blanking on his name. The man that inadvertently caused the term flying saucer to be coined. In 47.
What's his name in the Northwest?
Yes. Mount Rainier.
I'm just going to watch you guys think about it because I have no idea. So I'm just going to I'm going to stare at you until you guys come up with it.
Private pilot.
I would have been able to say it if you.
I know.
You are notorious, Dave Foley, for these. We'll assume it's a guy in Mount Rainier that came up with the.
He's the most famous. Yeah, he's the first. Yeah, he launched.
You need like this guy like Joe Rogan has in the back. Kenneth Arnold.
No.
Yeah.
Kenneth Arnold. Yeah. Thank you, Kenneth Arnold.
Yeah. Jack, get on it. What are you doing up back there? You're getting high like the kids do these days. What's going on? Sorry, I'm just busting balls of our producer Jack, who's filling in for Crissy and doing a fine job, I might say. But dropping the fucking ball on the Mount Rainier guy, Jesus.
Kenneth Arnold, one of the most famous names in the UFO lore. But that apparently that his story does go on that he did have the hitchhiker effect throughout the rest of his life. Apparently, he was kind of tormented by paranormal events and orbs for the rest of his life. His kids have come forward and talked about the fact that he never wanted to talk about it, but that these things kept happening to him for the rest of his life.
I remember James Fox interviewed his daughter, I believe, about that. Yeah, a little bit about it. Yeah. Yeah, that's something, all the way back then. And it's such a mystery. And, we think of the modern UFO era, 1947, but we don't really talk much about what's before that. And there's a lot of really interesting things, maybe not documented as well, but still there's quite a few things that happened. I'm sure you heard of the Foo Fighters and, 46 and, during the war. And then the what do they call them? The ghost rockets in Europe,
in Sweden,
in Europe, and that was 1946. All these bizarre things. So I think there's been bizarre things happening.
Yeah, and then you have tales of star people from in indigenous faiths in North America, South America, and Australia. Going, belief in star people who in petroglyphs and cave drawings and art, ancient art, all look an awful lot like the Greys. And these are cultures that couldn't possibly have been talking to each other because they're, New Mexico and Australia, as I understand how maps work, they're far apart.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's all such a puzzle.
Yeah, I've mentioned this once or twice, but my brother and I are writing a script about a guy who lived in the turn of the century, Edgar Cayce, who was the sleeping prophet. I don't know if you heard about him, but we were fascinated because there's a great book called The American Prophet, was written about 20 years ago. We were trying to get the rights forever and then finally got them. And he was a sort of psychic diagnostician. He almost kind of created the alternative health movement, but the more I dig into his stories and the more we are kind of talking about folks about everything from remote viewing to then even research I was doing yesterday where he was talking about like a kind of abduction experiences that really haunted him his whole life. Now he was calling them different things. There were these sort of like, kind of imps that at night, but he would there was these shadow things that were sort of it's there, it's all there, but it's almost compartmentalized in different kind of mythologies and different sort of descriptions and with religious clothing or with this kind of, and yet you start to sort of, it really does feel like these things, and it's almost like Skinwalker Ranch is the epicenter of where all these things kind of come together, which was something that I think George Knapp was telling us about last week. Of like, that was sort of the feeling that he got, was that it was just all there, just all in one place. Like the ghost people have to make friends with the alien because these people and the Bigfoot people, and it, because it's all sort of the same phenomenon happening
Yeah.
at the same time. But it's really wild how that kind of works.
Yeah. Yeah.
Before we let you go, Martin, and this has been great, by the way, thank you for doing this, and
Yes.
we have to
Yeah.
do this again.
Oh, I'd love to.
We you had mentioned earlier on, very early on, that you a poltergeist experience, and we love our ghost stories here at Really. We're not exclusively just interdimensional creatures, although ghosts might be that. But tell us what that was. You said that you'd had something, you weren't sure if it was UAP or what.
No, it was. I don't know exactly what it was. I still don't know, but it was something, and it happened to me firsthand. So I was cleaning out a house. It was sort of fall, I believe, and this was in the late 1990s, and it was a time of year. I had an auction company, and it was not really super busy then. So the lawyer said, "Hey, when you clean out the antiques, would you go in and clean out the rest of the house?" And I said, "Sure, that's fine." And I told him a fee, and he said, "Okay." So I cleaned out all the good things that I could sell, and then went in there on a day that was a beautiful sunny day, no wind or anything, um, and decided to do the job. And I was digging right in with my helpers that worked for me, and so I was upstairs, and the worker I had with me, I think I had just one worker that day in particular, and he was out in the garage cleaning out the garage, and he'd take trips to the dump. So I was I opened one of the bedroom doors. I go into it, and all the windows were down. And here in New England, we have storm windows too. They're like double
Mhm.
windows. So all the windows were down, and they had put in this ugly green carpet, and they never cut the bottom of the door. So you had to force the door open. I mean, what a pain in the neck that would be if you live there to put clothes in. You'd have to like drag the door open. So I dragged the door open, and I'm taking the junk out and putting them in a garbage bag, all the stuff in the garbage bag. And just before then, I finished sweeping the hallway, and the door was wide open downstairs. Again, there was no wind at all. And so I slid the broom down the stairs, so it was just at the bottom of the stairs, so I wouldn't, leave it upstairs as I was finishing up. And this was the last room on the upstairs, and putting all the clothes hangers and stuff in the bag, and I got it all filled up. Everything's out, and I drag it out into the hallway, and just then the closet door slammed. I mean, it slammed really loud. And I went back in. I said, "What the heck?" And I go to pull it, and sure enough, it catches on the carpet again. And I said, "Oh my God." And all of a sudden, the front door slammed, and I go down the stairs, and the broom is leaning up against the door. So I am
Whoa.
totally freaked out. And so I go just stand outside in the lawn and waited for Ron to get back. He gets back, and I said, "Ron, I'm not going in that house alone. No way." And I said, "It's haunted or something." And so he's going, "Ooh," teasing me. And we cleaned out the rest of the stuff, and he was getting ready to leave. And there was one thing left in the garage, and it was a flower basket, and it has the big wicker loop. It was a big wicker flower basket. And he worked at part time at a funeral parlor. And he says, "Oh yeah, I see these all the time, at funerals, and the big flower bouquets and those things." And so I didn't think anything of it. And we said goodbye. I paid him, and he took off. And so I go over and I grab the basket, and it's stuck. So I go, "What the heck?" So I pull on it, and I'm pulling on it really, really hard, so hard that it breaks and the bottom stays on the floor. And I toss it in, and then all of a sudden I go, "Oh my God." And I went over and I touched it with my foot, and there was nothing holding the bottom. It was
Yeah.
sliding right on the floor.
Wow.
There was no gook or anything on the floor. And that happened to me
That is
100%. And I'm not exaggerating. I'm not changing
Wow.
anything. That happened to me. And I thought I'm never going to tell anyone about it. And now I don't give a shit. So,
yeah, you gotta now.
yeah.
That's what, yeah, that the
Yeah.
broom and
Wow.
that is,
That's spooky. That's good. That's a good haunting.
I
That's a
know.
But you
very
know
good
what?
haunting.
I talked,
Yeah.
the house was built in 1940.
Yeah.
and I go by it every once in a while, and I've always wanted to stop and knock on the door, but I would think people would think I'm crazy, you know.
Well, you're
So
giving me good. I'm definitely like self interested. I'm like, note to self, ghost story. Appraiser is a great. That's such a cool, like, dealing with antiques, dealing with the sort of memories of these
Great character.
objects.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was like, okay, all right, now that's
well,
pretty good.
I've had things in my possession that I bought and stuff that I felt like I had to get rid of. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, just has a bad feeling about it, like a
Yeah.
bad energy.
No, you
I
need to
don't know
make
if it
your
means anything.
conjuring room. You need to get all your crazy sick dolls behind glass, and then
Yeah,
let young people wander through and get possessed. I mean, that's just my sick
Hmm.
brain, but
okay. Yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's
That's why
really
you
cool.
do what you do. You're the
That's why I
writer.
do it
Yeah,
the
yeah.
best I can.
And
No, that's awesome. That's a good one. That's a good way to lead us out of
That's
this. This was
great.
a fantastic talk. It was great to meet you. I'm not sure if you had
nice
ever
to
met
meet you.
Dave before, but this was awesome.
Nope, not in person, but
Not
Um,
in person,
yeah.
but online. I think.
Yes, online.
Yes,
Yes.
we've online
Yeah.
we've met. Yeah.
Yep.
But so
uh,
yeah, good to good to talk with you. And thanks. Yeah, and
Martin
thanks
Willis.
for
It's
thanks for
pod.
kind of,
Go ahead, Dave.
well, I'm just saying also thanks for being a pioneer in
Yeah,
the UFO podcasting
it
world.
is podcast
Oh,
UFO,
thank you.
correct?
I know it's backwards, but that's it. Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
excellent. Well,
Yeah.
check it out. There's just an incredible library of interviews that Martin has done. I personally am going to look up John Wygant, and learned a lot today. And we'll look into this, and we'll do this again for sure.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thanks,
sir.
Martin.